Well, good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Andy Reeser. I am OKI's Manager of Transportation Programming. And today we're going to be talking about OKI's Carbon Reduction Program for EV charging infrastructure. Just a reminder, please keep yourself on mute. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. You can use the raise your hand feature within Teams if you have a question. And also this meeting is being recorded. So with that, let's get started. I also have David Shuey with me, and I'll go through just some basics about the program, a little bit of background, and then Mr. Shuey will talk about the details of the application itself. So just by way of background, this is Carbon Reduction Program funds. These are federal transportation funds that are suballocated to OKI through the federal transportation law, which is called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which was signed in 2021. So OKI's program is specifically for the installation of publicly accessible electric vehicle charging infrastructure. The carbon reduction program overall, there's some other things that are eligible, but OKI has chosen to prioritize electric vehicle charging for our program. The focus is on DC fast charging equipment. So ideally, electric vehicle service equipment that support 100 kilowatts or greater. We will consider level 2 equipment if it's in an area of high density residential or employment. And we can show that there's adequate dwell times at that location. And the sponsor has to make a commitment to operate and maintain the electric vehicle equipment through its useful life. So eligible entities include area development districts, cities, counties, transit authorities, port authorities, transportation improvement districts, or any other units of government that have been able to sign contracts with ODOT, KYTC, or Indiana Department of Transportation. So basic parameters of this program, we allow one application per site. So a site would be one physical address. If it's another parking garage at another address, that would be a new application. Maximum 3 applications for local public agency or LPA. The applicant must provide at least a 20% match, and that's a requirement of this federal program, is at least a 20% match. The federal funds are capped upon award, meaning once the OKI board makes the decision and awards at a certain amount, that's the maximum. We can't go higher than that. So this is a competitive bid process, subject to state DOT oversight. And once you do get the award, once you bid out the construction of that, it's a competitive bid process as well. The process is a reimbursement arrangement. And just like any federal program, you have to get authorization before any work can be done for the federal phase. So as far as the funds available for the Ohio Carbon Reduction Program, it has to be within the OKI urbanized area, which is most of the 4 counties of Butler, Warren, Claremont, and Hamilton. We do have a map available if you need to know what's in the urbanized area or not, but it's basically most of the area. In Ohio, we have $13 million available in this program, maximum of $1 million per application, and you are allowed a maximum of 3 applications per sponsor. In Kentucky, we don't have quite as much money available. We have $3 million available throughout the life of the program. It's capped at $750,000 per application, and again, 3 applications max per sponsor. In Indiana, only $30,000 available. I know that's not a lot of money, but we have just a small area in Indiana that we get money for, and $30,000 is the cap on that as well. So as far as the timeline, we announced this program on November 1st. You have until February 1st, 2024 to get in the applications here to OKI, submitted via email. March 14th, 2024, that's when the OKI Executive Committee will meet and select the projects to be for award. And then it will move into our Transportation Improvement Program. And then after March 14th, begins the coordination with your district ODOT, KYTC, or NDOT district rep on developing a scope and schedule for your project. Just a few other notes. Once awarded, once OKI makes that award in March, this will be subject to district office oversight, either ODOT, KYC, or NDOT. So they'll be your main point of contact, and they'll have oversight over the process. So soon after that March date, you'll need to contact, if you are awarded, you'll need to contact your LPA coordinator, and we'll let you know who that is to begin the project scoping. In Ohio, especially, and in Kentucky as well, they prefer a past participant in ODOT's local LET program that has experience being an LPA. So, for example, this past go round, we had a pilot program this past spring. One of our award recipients was 3CDC in Cincinnati, and the city of Cincinnati has much more experience being an LPA, and so their ODOT preferred that 3CDC partner with the city on that application and moving that project forward. So that was a good arrangement there. If you're a township that's not used to the LPA process, it might be a good idea to partner with your county or some other local agency that has that experience being an LPA. Some other things to note, when you go into this application process, it's good to anticipate some costs that you might not think of, and costs that are specific to being a federal process, like the environmental process called NEPA, as well as right-of-way certification. And then there's other costs that will be before you ever get to awarding the construction contract. OKI will add 10% to the award for construction engineering in Ohio and Kentucky State Forces, and that pays the state for oversight of the project. The project must be added to the TIP, that's OKI's Transportation Improvement Program, and then it goes into the statewide TIP. And keep in mind that process could take 3 months because ODOT updates the STIP on a quarterly basis. And you can't expend any of those federal funds until it's in the STIP and until you get federal authorization. So that's all I have. I'll turn it over to David to give you some details on the application.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Shuey, Director of Information Systems and Analytics here at OKI, and I'm going to walk you through the Carbon Reduction Program application today. So it consists of 5 points, or 5 sections. So we have an application information, we have a cost estimate, certifications, evaluation factors, and planning factors. And if you've been through our funding process in the past, this application will look pretty familiar. We follow that same template that we've used in the past. And so up first is the application information. And before I get started with this, I wanted to remind you that as you look at our application, it is Excel based. All you'll be responsible for filling out are the cells that are in white. So that's where you'll be able to type and fill in your information. And so this one's really pretty basic here. So first we start with what state you're applying funds for. As Andy mentioned, it's in all 3 of our states, so Ohio, Kentucky, or Indiana. You'll need to give the project a meaningful name, so something that identifies it, especially if you're doing multiple applications this round. We want to make sure that each one has a unique name. Applicant name, which would be the municipality or the agency name, then a contact for the project, and we want their name, title, email, address, and phone number. And finally, the most important important piece on this is the project description. And if you participated in the pilot, you'll notice this is a little bit different than what we did last time. And the guidance document, you'll be wanting to use it as you follow through this process. It will specifically tell you what we need to include here, but I'll very briefly kind of go over what we're looking for in this description. So we first of all need to know the type and quantity of charging points at that site. We also want to know what amenities are located within a quarter mile and what vehicle access looks like to the site. So amenities, we're talking about things like opportunities to go shopping, restaurants, other factors or other amenities that would lead to dwell time at a particular location. Next, we want you to describe the potential users of the site. So again, if this is maybe it's near a hotel, there's a hotel next door, it could be hotel guests, there could be restaurants, it could be someone's going to Kroger or Meijer or a place like that. That's the type of information that we're looking like that in terms of potential users. If it's at your local park, it could be the park users, the folks that are coming to use the park. So that's what we're looking for there. Next, we need you to describe site prep that's required. So what type of site prep to make this site feasible for you? Are we talking about paving? Is it talking about potentially just restriping, signage, other work like that, lighting, things that might be required to make this a feasible charging location? And then finally, we need to describe what your maintenance plan would be for at least 5 years of operation. So one of the strings that comes along with this money is that you must operate the equipment for the life of the equipment. And right now, our guidelines that we've been told is that's at least 5 years of operation. So describe what that maintenance plan looks like. Maintenance, when we talk about charging stations, is really key. Keeping them up and operational certainly lends to their ability to be utilized to a much greater extent than if there's a great deal of downtime. The next section is cost estimates. So what we're looking here is we're looking at strictly the construction phase and then what that fiscal year would be. How much funds are requested and then what your local match is. The spreadsheet itself will calculate what the total project estimate is and then what that local match percentage is. We'll talk about why this is important in a second and how we're going to score this, but that's what we're looking for here. One of the most important things is your cost estimate must include an engineer stamp. That's something that we do require. And as Andy mentioned before, we will add 10% federal funds for Kentucky State Forests and ODOT projects. So you don't have to add those, but we'll add those behind the scenes for you. Up next are certifications, and these are required. This is, again, a federal requirement for federal funding. So what we're looking for here is to make sure that there's an ADA transition plan that's in place and its date of adoption. We also are looking for an adopted Title VI plan, as well as we're asking you to certify that you understand that non-federal match is a requirement of receiving these funds. Also that you're responsible for providing funds for cost overruns, as Andy mentioned before, so that if things go above and beyond what your original estimate is, then you'll be responsible. There won't be an associating match coming from OKR from the CRP pot of funds for that. And then additionally, that you understand that accepting federal funds and canceling or delaying the project can negatively impact you on future applications to OKI where you would receive negative points in that instance. And additionally, that you're going to pledge to maintain that federal investment in a reasonable and prudent manner through its useful life, again, which we've mentioned right now is at least 5 years. And then finally, you'll put the name of the person that's responsible for those certifications, their title, the organization, and the date. Up next is evaluation factors. And so the first thing we're looking at here, and this is really, before you even get into filling out this application, you need to have a detailed discussion with your utility provider for your particular location. We want to make sure there's sufficient utility network capacity at the location before we go down the road. And the reason we say this is that often, if there's not sufficient capacity, the time and the expense to make the upgrades to the utility infrastructure can be significant. And it might be a thing that would end up by pushing this project back and your funding would elapse. So we want to make sure that the answer to this question is yes. I would say that if it's no, you can reach out to us, and if there's some special circumstances that we need to know about, we can certainly have that discussion. But the question needs to be answered here in the affirmative. The next question is whether or not this is an expansion or a new site. And so that helps us understand a little bit more about the site. So far, we haven't seen any expansions, but we're expecting that over time we'll begin to see more of those and probably less new installations. The next thing we're going to ask for is what the ADT is on the nearest major artery that goes past this site. And I think we're looking within a quarter mile. And I'll talk about in a minute here some resources where we can find some of this information if you don't have a source of ADT for yourself, which is average daily traffic. Next thing we're looking for is the source to the nearest DCFC that's at least 100 kilowatts. And again, I'll show you a resource in it here in a minute where you can get that information. I want to know whether or not renewable energy makes up any of the supply here. So we're looking for this in a percentage, and then we will score it based upon that, so that if you're able to provide renewable energy for this installation, you will receive bonus points for that. And then finally, the project delivery history. We want to know whether or not your organization has had any OKI funded projects miss their originally programmed date. And if so, specify the projects. And if they've been within a certain window of time, then there will be potentially a negative points applied to your application for that slippage. We talked about ADT. This is one source that you can use. This is our traffic count tool that we have. And if you go to traffic.oki.org, you can take and zoom into an area. You can search for an intersection or street and find nearby counts. And so you'll pop this up, and as you can see, it's an example here. We give you what the ADT is and the year that was taken. Again, if you've got more recent counts or a count that you have your engineer taking or whatnot, you can certainly feel free to use that here. We just need to know what your source is. Next, here's an app that you might want to use to find the nearest DCFC locations. And so this is called PlugShare. And so if you go to plugshare.com, and what you'll want to do is you'll want to filter on DCFC chargers as well as on the kilowatt range. In this case, we're looking at 100 kilowatts and greater. There are some chargers out there still that are 25 or 50 kilowatts or 75. We're not including those because what we're trying to do here is really future-proof our system. So we want to look at faster DC chargers than that. And so really the idea is here we're trying to gain some spacing in the region so that we don't have chargers just piling up on top of one another. So the further you are away from one, the more points you'll be eligible to receive. We'll jump back into the application here. And so up next is our planning factors for all projects. And so what we'll want to know here is what your proximity to a Justice 40 community is. So this is with the Biden-Harris administration, something that they're having a focus on. And so you need to determine what your distance is, whether you're within one of these communities or whether you're at a certain distance. And again, in a minute, I'll show you an application for you to be able to determine what your distance is. And then what we're going to look at is our typical categories for environmental justice. So we're going to look at minority, elderly, zero-car household, low income, or disabled. And again, you'll indicate whether or not your proposed project is within one of those communities. And if it is, you just need to indicate yes there. And then we're also asking you to describe any direct or indirect impacts or positive benefits your project may have on the identified EJ groups. And so then we want to know both positive, and here we want to know negative impacts. And then finally, you're supposed to outline your communication plan with any of the OKI identified EJ groups related to the project. So you can do public meetings, whether it be bilingual information or other such ways to reach out to those communities. Here's a tool, and I apologize for the long URL. It's not ours, but it's one that's published by the U.S. government through an Esri website. And so this is Justice 40 communities. So you can go in here and quickly determine whether or not your proposed site is within one of these identified communities. So next I'll take and we'll run you through the evaluation factors and tell you how we're going to score these things. So this first one, we talked about the project description on that first section of the form. In the past, we'd broken this out a little bit differently where we ask you about amenities and some of these other things. This time we're going to take and run through each one of these and determine how you'll score based upon the criteria that I had mentioned early on, which are type and quantity of charging points, amenities within a quarter mile, the potential users of the site, site prep needed, and then your maintenance plan. And each one of those will be eligible for 3 points for a total of 15 points for this section. The next one gets back to the sufficient network capacity. Again, yes or no. Again, no is likely to probably mean your project should not go forward at this time. Then we have proximity to Justice 40 communities. So the closer you are to a Justice 40 community, the more points you're going to get here. And we go from 0 if you're greater than 3 miles, up to 5 if you're located within a Justice 40 community. Our planning factors, which will be scored either by our EJ committee or our CRP committee, are worth 5 points. The distance to the nearest DCFC, again, if you're 5 miles or greater, you're going to get 10 points. If you're less than a mile, it's going to be 0. So you can see the graduated scale that we've set up here. We have average daily traffic. If you've got more than 25,000 cars going by a site on a given day, it's going to be worth 10 points, all the way down to if you get less than 5,000, again, it will be 0. And then for our renewable energy, if you're able to provide 90 to 100% renewable energy, you'll score 10 points. If you have between 30 and 89%, you'll have 5. And if it's less than 30%, you'll be assigned 0 points. And then local share, if you're able to overmatch, if you overmatch 50% or greater, you can see you get 10 bonus points, which is huge. And again, graduated, we go down to if you're 25 to 29, you get 1. And if you're just doing the basic, you don't get any bonus points. And then finally, we talked about the scoring for a project delivery in the past. So if you've had one project slip in the past programmed year, you'll receive a negative point. If you've had 2 or more slip, it's going to be a -3. And then finally, if you've had a project cancel, it's going to be -5. We hope that no one's in that situation now. And so we got through the application. Again, we think it's pretty streamlined and pretty easy to get through. We provide a lot of resources for you to be able to find the answers to these things. The big thing is going to be doing the homework behind that. The application, we think, is the easy part. There's a lot to think through and a lot to understand before you take on one of these projects. And so we always think it's smart to work with either a consultant or some type of installation partner. And what you're really looking there for is someone that has experience with EVSE installation. This is kind of critical. If you're working with someone that hasn't done this before, they might have electrical experience. There's a lot of things to consider with these type of installs that if you've not done it before, it can be quite complex and intriguing at times. We also would ask you to probably look for someone that has the ability to service that equipment over the long term. Again, I mentioned the importance of keeping chargers online. And if we have chargers that go offline, we know that they won't be utilized. One of the goals of this program is to put chargers in places that we know they're going to be utilized and that they're online and they're available for people when they need them. And then finally, in terms of your installation partner, it's really good to have someone that has experience with working with local jurisdictions or agencies, as well as they have some experience dealing with the utility. Doing the hookup and making sure that you know what you need to know before you get into that is really critical. And if you find people with this level of experience, it certainly will help the process. And then some things to think about in terms of being able to control costs and future-proof your site. You always want to minimize electrical runs when possible. The more copper you run, the more pavement you dig up, the more infrastructure you add to a site, the quicker the costs go up. So you really want to think about where your current electrical service is and how can you place this in proximity to that so that you're minimizing those electrical runs and you're not doing excessive trenching and running extra electrical wire you don't need to run. If you're looking at DCFC equipment, make sure you understand demand charges and what those are. These can add up very quickly and can be a very, very unpleasant surprise if you're not familiar with this. So again, looking back to your installation partner or your partner is helping you walk through this. And at the very least, if not, please speak to someone at the utility about this, but please understand demand charges and what those look like and when they might apply to your site. And always, where possible, plan for future expansion. So if you have the ability now when you're tearing up pavement and you're trenching to run additional conduit to a site, we recommend that you do that. It's certainly an eligible expense as part of this program. And that way, if you want to expand in the future, if this is kind of your starter kit until you see how things get rolling in the future, you imagine yourself doubling or tripling a site, then what that'll allow you to do is do that at a much lesser expense because you're not going to be trenching and digging in next time. Then finally, make sure that as you're looking at equipment and as you're going through the RFP process, that you review equipment O&M warranties. And the idea is here you want to understand how much the manufacturer is going to warrant that equipment and for how long. So what you might be liable for on the other side, if it's, ideally you'd like that to come as close as possible to matching your commitment to this, which is 5 years. So you'd want to get at least that, and if not, you might want to think about having some type of maintenance plan in place to help prevent issues down the line. So that sums up what we've had to talk about here today. At this point, we're going to kind of open it up for questions, and if you have questions, we'd be glad to answer those for you now. You can either unmute yourself or raise your hand. So Greg, you have a question. Would you like to go ahead and answer?
Yes, I just had a question. This was a lot of information. Can you share this presentation with us so we can share it with others in our organization?
Yes, we have recorded this session and we plan on putting it up on our YouTube channel, as well as a link to it at the funding site that we currently have up. So yes, we'll push this back out. Hopefully we'll have it up sometime tomorrow for everybody. Other questions?
Is there a
Dave,
timeline?
I'll just add that on the website, if you go to oki.org and click on funding opportunities, you'll see a link to our carbon reduction program. And we have a guidance document up there now. You can also find the application there. And as Dave said, we'll post this video of the workshop on there as well. And my contact information will be listed on the website as well.
Melissa at CVG, you have a question?
I do. Is there a timeline to use the funds? I know they need to be operational for 5 years, but from when the funds are awarded, when do they have to, is there a timeline to have installation complete?
Andy, did you hear that? Okay, the question is there a timeline to have funding complete? When do the funds lapse? How long do people have to get projects in the ground?
That's going to be determined during your scoping meeting. So it'll be laid out. What's the expected award date of the construction award? And there's some flexibility there, but pretty much you're expected to hit that date. So I know that's a little bit wishy-washy, but for example, this last pilot program that we did, OKI made the awards in June. And when they went through the scoping process, generally was June of 2024 was set as the target date to get the construction contract underway. And so that would be our expectation, would be about a year or so after OKI makes their award.
And so Andy, we have another question in the chat. Kennedy asks, is it required to have an installation part prior to applying? The answer to that would be no, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, no requirement for that.
Any other questions? All right, if there's none, we appreciate your time and attention today. Again, we will put this recording up on our website. Hopefully we'll have a link to it on our funding site by sometime tomorrow. And as always, if you have any questions throughout the process, don't hesitate to reach out to either Andy Reeser or myself at our email address that are listed on the screen. We'll be more than glad to kind of help you as we can through the process again. But if you haven't done this before, we do recommend making sure that you're working with folks and have guidance on getting yourself through this type of project, because it's very different than a lot of other projects that we deal with here at OKI. So with that, thank you for attending and have a great day.